You are listening to Detroit Craft Academy, episode number 9.
Detroit Craft Academy. Detroit Crafts with Jody. Detroit Craft Academy.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Detroit Craft Academy. I am your host, Miss Jody Lynn, and this is the podcast where I talk to creative entrepreneurs, artists, and crafty badasses about crafting their dreams. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to review the show. And remember, you can always drop me a line over at our website at DetroitCraftAcademy.com. On today's show, I talk with Levon Kafafian. Levon is an artist, weaver, craftsperson, teacher, and brains behind Detroit Fringe Society. I got to meet up with Levon in his studio, and we got to talking about how he got started. So I hope that you all enjoy the rest of the show. So thanks everyone for listening, tuning into Detroit Craft Academy. I'm here with Levon. Levon, how do you say your last name?
Kafafian.
Kafafian. Okay, I thought so. I actually knew that, but I just didn't want to make sure that, I'm not.
Yeah, it's always good to ask.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So first off, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
Okay. I grew up in two different places. Mm-hmm. I went to elementary school in New Jersey, North Bergen County.
Did you grow up in New Jersey?
I did. I was born in Manhattan and lived in Astoria, Queens for 3 years, and then paid many frequent visits there to see my family afterwards. But my parents moved us to Cliffside Park in New Jersey, just across the river, so that we could live in a nice suburban house.
A quaint little dream.
Yep. Then we moved into an apartment building, and it was great. We've had a very interesting trajectory. When I was 10, my family moved to Michigan. Mm-hmm. Stayed with another family for a year, moved into a motel for 6 months, and then started living in a quaint little apartment building in Oak Park. And was there until, I believe I was 16 or 17 at the time. My parents bought a house also in Oak Park, and I went to Berkeley High School.
Yeah.
And when I got out of Berkeley, I went to Wayne State University.
Wayne State.
Mm-hmm. 4 years deep, I jumped ship and started going to CCS.
4 years?
Uh-huh.
So you were nearly graduated.
Kind of not. I mean, I went through school with many different majors. Mm-hmm. I was constantly changing my major. I went from linguistics when I started to just Japanese to having a crisis and talking to my dad after being like, oh my God, maybe I want to do this, maybe I want to do that, maybe I want to go to New York or Chicago or whatever. And he's like, shut up, sit down, write all the careers you might want to do on this paper. And then he picked fucking journalism for me.
He picked for you?
He picked journalism for me. And so I went and was like, you know what, fine, I'll do what you say. Took a semester of journalism. It was fine. Half a semester into the next semester, I quit.
Yeah.
And was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going for. Mm-hmm. I figured it out eventually, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do anthropology. And it was cool, and I threw in as many credits as I possibly could so that I could graduate, quote unquote, on time.
Yeah.
And then I ran into another major stoppage point. I was just like, I will never get a job
with anthropology
ever.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So I was at a friend's house over the summer for what they called family dinner. Mm-hmm. And I met somebody who was stopping through town for a day, who was really inspirational to me. They were a bartender, a musician, they booked shows, and they also did rug repair. And that kind of piqued my interest. So I went and I got a job at a bar, and I got a DJ set, and I started learning. And then I asked my boss at Hagopian, where I had been working for 6 years, or I'm sorry, at that point in time, 3 years, if I could work in the repair department as an apprentice. And she said, well, first you have to learn how to make the thing before you can fix it.
That makes sense.
Which is total bull.
Oh.
But because subsequently I have worked in the repair department there. And almost none of the people there actually know how to weave from scratch. So it's just a different skill set. So she said, go to Wayne State, take a class with Urban. He's great. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And I did it. And I fell in love immediately. So I switched my major again.
To weaving?
Was
it?
At the time it was, I didn't want to take the fine arts approach at Wayne State. Right. Because they require you to take so many other disciplines of art.
Yeah.
And I just wanted a pragmatic weaving education.
Right.
So I decided to go down the fashion and apparel design route. But they were like, oh, okay, cool. You can take like 3 weaving electives. And I was like, what? No, I want to do half and half. Why isn't there an interdisciplinary program at this school? And they were like, because we can't get anybody to stay on staff for it. I was like, okay, fine, whatever.
Bye.
I'm leaving. So Urban actually, the professor retired that year. And I was like, even more reason. So I jumped ship and I went to CCS.
And to CCS, they have the program that you needed or wanted?
Well...
Or did you have to make it?
It was closer. It was much closer. There were a lot of things that I had to do as far as requirements and stuff, but I was able to spend a lot more time working on weaving and textiles. And I could incorporate it into many other classes that weren't geared towards that specifically. Yeah. So I was there for 3 years, and I decided that I was going to go ahead and finish out my degree at Wayne. Because I had 4 classes left to graduate.
And what did you end up graduating with?
Well, I had 4 classes left to graduate in either anthropology or Japanese.
Did you do them both?
No, I did anthropology because I was doing part-time at CCS.
Oh, yeah.
And part-time at Wayne, and I could not have possibly done a dual major at Wayne.
Insane.
So I finished out my Wayne State degree just before CCS one because there was a Drawing 2 class that didn't transfer from Wayne to CCS because of many reasons. So I was stuck for another semester, and it just so happened that they had a class that was going to China. That they had never done before that was new for that semester. So I did it.
Yeah.
I went to China. It was fun.
Oh my gosh.
It was amazing. Awesome. It was great.
That's
I loved
so good.
it, and it really shifted some of the things in my work.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's probably just a ton of different patterns and textiles and different things that you were able to experience and see.
Well, it's a whole different thought process about making art and making craft goods.
Yeah.
So we went on a trip that was focused on craft in China.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we stayed with some jewelry students at a university in Hangzhou. Which is about 3 hours south of Shanghai on the coast. And we had an amazing time. There were metalsmithing demos, there were some textile demos. We went to a lot of museums. Because Hangzhou is a cultural capital. There's a ton of museums there. I mean, they even have an umbrella museum.
That's so awesome.
Go figure. So we saw a lot of things and just experienced the way that Chinese culture deals with art and how it's much more about the continuation of the craft and the tradition, that the legacy of the last 5,000 years.
Yeah.
You pick one thing and you become really skilled at it, and it's very refined, and there's just these elegant gestures about it. Whereas the American idea is much more individualistic and very pave your own way, big, brash, bold, do something different.
Yeah.
So it was just really interesting to see the differences. And as a result, I made these teapots. One that was before going to China and one that was after coming back. And the differences are so stark. The American one is it has a giant pour spout, and it's just this huge vessel that can hold a lot of water. Probably 3 or 4 of our size cups, these mugs. But the one that I made after I came back was this delicate, small thing with a delicate spout and a delicate handle, and it just pours
Oh my
enough
gosh.
for 4 Chinese teacups.
Do you have photos of them?
I have them here.
Do you?
Yeah, they're on my website too, but
Okay. Well, just so we can post them. That's so awesome. It's like really cool when you have an experience like that it can actually change the profile of like the way you see things. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, it was really lovely to engage with that, and I'm thankful that I was in school at the time to do that.
How cool. That's kind of like makes it better that you had that experience.
Totally.
So growing up, did you come from a creative family?
That is a really difficult question to answer. My father has always been an inventor, an engineer, a self-made entrepreneur. He's never been able to really work for anyone else but himself. So he figured out by being left alone with a machine how to screen print with multiple colors, like just like a printer's setup. And he like figured it out top to bottom with no real resources, no internet, no books, nothing. Just here's the system. He was always the kind of father to be like, sit next to me, get me the hammer, get me the wrench, get me the screwdriver, whatever. And I was never interested whatsoever. I was like, just let me go play. Like, I don't want to do this. But, I mean, like, he definitely shoves it in my face now. He's like, when you were, as a child, you never wanted to do these things, and I offered to teach you how to screen print. And you refused, saying, it's not cool, like, I'm not interested in art. And then years later, I'm in a program at school, and like, hey, Dad, guess what? I learned how to screen print today. It's so cool. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? But, I was always surrounded by a lot of beautiful objects, and I was always astounded by the beauty of these utilitarian things. I was as a very young child, was enthralled with the Demi-Tasse coffee cups that were always in use in my family. The Persian rug that my grandmother had in her living room that everyone gathered around and that I would always be rolling around on as a kid. Like those were really strong influences on me, I would say.
Yeah. So what do you think it was, like, other than just meeting that guy, that made you interested in weaving specifically?
I had already thought about going into textile design. That was on the list.
Was it?
Yeah, my dad picked journalism, but textile design was on the list.
Okay.
But so was sound design and like cooking and all these other things.
All of
like
these things.
It was just so all over the place. And I had actually been like, Dad, I want to go to FIT for textile design, and he was like, you're going to be a burden on your family, and you don't even have an art portfolio. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Stay here, take some classes, then do it. But I was like just turning over a lot of ideas in my head at the time. I was into Project Runway when it happened when I was a teenager, and something, I don't know exactly, like what led me to want to do textile design.
Just kind of like,
because I don't remember how
how
like my thought processes were working at that time. I only know that once I got my hands into it, it was not something I could separate myself from.
Yeah.
And part of it, I think, has to do with being connected with my lineage, I guess. Like my grandmother on my dad's side she was a very skilled needle worker. She did needlepoint and needle crochet and all these things. And her mother before her was absolutely infinitely skilled. And my grandmother's father was a tailor. So it's like these things that are like deeper in my history. And of course my father tells me the story of his uncle who was a rug dealer in the US who was doing importing, and then as soon as like my dad and his father got into the country, the guy shut down the business and didn't offer to pass it on to anybody else. So these interesting like storylines that flow through.
Yeah. So were you, growing up, did you get to see any of the things that your your family had made? Your
Kind of.
your
I mean,
older
like, they were
family?
on
Like,
the
were those,
wall, they
okay.
were in the pillows, but,
Okay.
like, I never actually connected things together. And it wasn't really until I started doing textiles that my family members started telling me this stuff. They're just like, oh, you know, your grandmother was this, and she has work in the main church in Armenia. And I was like, why no one told me?
Yeah. That's kind of,
Why you not tell me?
I mean, that's kind of amazing though, that like you just automatically like became interested in this thing without even being like told about it though.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's...
almost like the idea that like the idea of like nature and nurture, like if it's like comes to you because of like your bloodline or if it comes to you because like the things around you.
I mean, yeah, I got a job at Hagopian, World of Rugs, by chance.
Yeah.
I was working, my first job was at Cold Stone Creamery in Birmingham.
Really?
And my
How long?
aunt was in town. I was like, I had just turned 18 at this point. And I was sick and tired of Cold Stone. I did not want to be singing for tips. I was making little money. And my aunt was in town, and I was like complaining to her the entire time. And she was like, you have to be proactive. You have to go out and like ask for jobs and this and that, whatever. So she wanted to go to Hagopian to pick out a rug for one of her places. And I needed a ride to work.
Perfect.
And it just so happened to be down the street. And she was like, you know what? Well, if you come with us to the rug store a little bit early, like we'll go there because it closes first. Then we'll drop you off
Yeah.
at the store. So fine. I went into the store. I was like, wow, this is actually like really beautiful and amazing. Like, it'd be kind of cool to work here.
Yeah.
And so we happened to know the receptionist from the church community, and I was just like, are you guys hiring? And she's like, hold on, let me ask my manager. She gets a piece of paper from him. I fill out this form, hand it to him, and he's like, all right, well, you know Maggie, so how about Friday?
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was a really interesting moment. Like, I was like, oh, is it that easy to get this job?
Yeah. Oh, that's cool though.
And I was like really happy about it, and I was there for three years before I started doing textiles, and another 3 years after. And this past summer, I actually went back to do some work in the repair department, learned a few things, and was able to apply some of the skills that I already had. But definitely a different world from weaving.
So how did you transition from working for somebody else to working for yourself? How did that start?
I started with scarves.
You started with scarves. All right.
Yeah, so I was still a student at the time, and I went to the St. John's Armenian Church Bazaar, which happens at the end of September every year, and I was offered a space to have like a loom demo and have a table of my like woven goods, and someone bought one of the scarves that I had on the table, and this was just like, actually no, let me rephrase that. She liked the work she saw, and she asked me if I could make a scarf as a gift for someone. She needed it for Christmas, so I was like, you know what, okay, might as well. So she commissioned me, I made it, I gave it to her, and the person who wore it was somehow in touch with the people at the Detroit Artist Market. And someone at the Artist Market reached out to me and said, I need some of those scarves for the store. I was like, okay, I'll make like 6. So I made a bunch, and I took them over, and that just started the ball rolling with this idea that like I could support myself with my weaving. And it spiraled into like, okay, doing Noel night and doing other craft shows, and eventually it built up enough that I could support myself to some degree while I was working part-time at the other places, and have a little bit of time to make art pieces and show them in the world. But it's once I started teaching workshops in my own space that I could really dive in fully
Yeah. So now, like, we're at your workshop right now. Like, what do you want to tell people what you do here?
Okay, so this is a community weaving studio, and as such, there are a number of different programs that we run. We have a whole list of courses and workshops coming up for the spring semester as soon as I upload them. And there are some folks, friends of mine, who I hire for contract weaving to help me with the massive production of scarves that are coming through here. And when I say massive, I mean like, not more than 100 a year.
Yeah. Well, they're so intricate.
I mean, they take a lot of time. Each scarf takes between like the fastest scarf that we do here takes 4 hours.
Yeah.
The longest takes probably like 8. All things considered. And that's just a lot of time for one piece of work. Especially as they're scarves, like people often are like taken aback by the prices because they're not used to scarves that are like so
real
expensive.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you look at a scarf like this and you look at a scarf from like Hermes.
Yeah.
And the quality is just like 1,000 times different. The Hermes scarf is like, you could have gotten that at Target.
Yeah.
But it's got a name on it.
Yeah. Are there challenges that you have to face specifically being a textile artist in Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't too many resources around here. I have to order my yarns, or I have to go to, I have to take a 45-minute drive with a friend, because I don't drive. So I have to like beg somebody to take me to a yarn store for weaving purposes. That's 45 minutes away. That's a major block of a day just to get materials. And there are a few places that offer sewing services that I know of, at least. And the region just doesn't have too much of an experience with hand-woven goods. To just have the idea, or just craft goods in general. Like, people are not as used to it here. If you go to some place like Chicago, people are like, oh, that price on that piece, that's fair. That's actually like a really great price. And you come here and people are like, God, that's expensive. How could you possibly expect to sell that sort of thing? And I'm like, y'all just don't get it.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely still that crowd. It's like I feel like we're in a time where like we're going from like the ideas that our parents, the baby boomers, have like had in our head, like, oh yeah, like just buy, everything's cheap. Whereas like we're going back to the traditional sense of buying things that even maybe like our grandparents or great grandparents are like, I will spend a lot of money on this item because I know it will last a long time and it's quality.
The transition is slower here than in other places.
Yeah, for sure. It's slowly. It's slowly. Coming.
We don't have like. We haven't had a craft school here. We haven't had. To say, like a Penland or an Arrowmont, like a school that is dedicated only to craft and that is both professional and vocational.
Yeah.
Like, there's less of an existing framework here for people to see craft objects within.
So that being said, like with your business, like what are some of the biggest challenges that you've had with running your business?
For me specifically, it's the business side of things.
Yeah.
As a creative, like, I don't want to do any of that stuff. Like, I'm not here for accounting. I'm not here for, like, figuring out taxes. I'm not here for all of the other, like, systematic stuff, even though I, like, work within systems. Like, it's just so much more difficult to deal with the paperwork end of things.
Yeah.
Especially with grants and applications and submissions, just like all of the paperwork that comes with being an artist, dealing with like internal systems as well, like keeping track of things and organization of not physical things.
Yeah. I have a really hard time organizing projects and time management because those things.
Oh, time management is the worst. Like, don't even get me started.
Yeah, I know.
I wake up and I'm like, what am I working on today? Sometimes I just have no clue, and sometimes I just can't like bring myself to do it because I'm my own employer.
Yeah.
But I pay for it later. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh, cool, I have a deadline. I'm going to not sleep for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that funny? I like sometimes it's because like, I don't know, like I have such a hard time with time management that like I think I'm getting stuff done and then I realize that I waited like a super long time to do something. Maybe it's just like I'm a huge procrastinator.
I'm definitely have always been in that position. I prefer to get motivation from deadlines, but also I don't like, how do I put this? When I work on a project, I want to work on it from start to finish. Mm-hmm. Or at least like handle a specific part of the process from start to finish. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go in and be like, oh, I'll work on it a little bit today and a little bit tomorrow and a little bit next week.
Yeah.
I want to be fully engaged with it the entire time I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So if I've got like 3 projects and I have to like scoot from this one to the other one, that's more about like I'm bored with this project and I want to work on that project. But when it comes to, say, like an art piece, because that's I think, more on the design side of manufacturing. But when it comes to art pieces or special commissions, I want it all done in one, like, chunk.
Yeah. What challenges do you have creatively? Why did I say creatively? Creatively.
I would say... I mean, like, it's different because sometimes you have, like, let's say, for example, with the scarves. Mm-hmm. I don't want to work on 2 scarves that are identical.
Yeah.
Because that's not exciting to me. Mm-hmm. But I definitely see the benefit of doing multiples and of being able to reproduce certain things and having a smaller line. All these things make sense to me. Mm-hmm. But that's where I ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you reproduce this thing for me? Here are the parameters. Here's the material. Go.
Yeah.
I'll take the deliverable. Thank you. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to, I mean, like, special commissions, because it's usually something new.
Yeah.
Or there's some aspect of it that is different. Like, somebody will see a pattern and be like, oh my God, I really love that pattern. I want it huge. Mm-hmm. I want like a big piece of fabric, and I want it in a different colorway. Like, okay, that's different enough that it'll motivate me to get through it.
Yeah.
Whereas just making another scarf that is the same as the last one is more challenging for me. When somebody asks me to reproduce something I've made before, I don't have the same feeling about it as if they were like saying, hey, I want you to make this thing for me. Mm-hmm. Specifically because like I like that spark of instigation from someone else. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a bit of collaboration in that. Like they have this vision for a thing and them telling me I can produce some kind of vision for it that is a little bit different but influenced by theirs. Mm-hmm. And then create this thing that I would have never made by myself. I think that's really interesting. But again, those are more on the side of like production craft.
Yeah.
Air quotes. Mm-hmm. Just to like put it in sound.
Yeah.
But when I'm working on an art piece, whether it's an object for the wall or an installation or a costume or a performance, those are always new.
Yeah.
And the challenges I have with that kind of work is sometimes not having the space to leave it somewhere, to let it simmer, if you will. I have a large studio space here, but it has to A, be presentable because people are always coming through. B, it has to be organized and neat because people are working here.
Yeah.
And C, looms take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So even though I have a lot of space, it's all compartmentalized.
Yeah.
I don't really have any kind of like nooks and crannies where I can set up an installation for a while.
Uh-huh.
So unless it's like a woven piece that's on the loom that I
Here,
can take over to the sewing machine or something, like those sorts of things work out better. But
yeah, your studio, it has a lot of space, but it reminds me of like a classroom, which it is.
it is. I mean, it's a classroom, it's a workroom, it's a studio, it's a factory, whatever you want to call it. It's like a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And having a separate space is something that could ease that challenge.
Yeah.
But on top of that, the biggest challenge I have is, and I know a lot of people like talk about this being something different, like you just need to like engage with the practice to make the inspiration come. But I have a lot of trouble like creatively waiting for like that chunk of inspiration to drop for major bodies of work. Like I do plenty of reading. I do lots of activities that inform that. But I'm so deeply ingrained in this production mode that sometimes it can be hard to like remove myself from production and go into play mode.
Yeah, like you need that creative studio time where you as an artist can step away and be an artist and not have to worry about the business part.
Not even so much that, like, because, I mean, I go into the studio and I'll make woven fabric.
Uh-huh.
But to be doing things that are more freely experimental,
Right.
to do things that aren't just based on the loom, takes extra inspiration because I'm stuck in this mode so much of the time. I have to rip myself away from it and throw myself in another situation where I'm, say, my only option is to sit here with this mannequin and a bunch of material and slap it on the mannequin and figure out how it feels together. A lot of it for me comes, like the work that I do that is on the artistic side comes from seeing it in my head, like literally having visions. Like I'll start drifting into some vision space and I can see, hear, feel, touch, smell, whatever, all of the different senses, what it is that I'm going to be working on. With some elements that aren't, like some details that aren't as clear. But there are shapes that I can see, things I want to produce once I've seen them in that mind's eye.
Do you have like anything that you do to get into that creative flow?
I guess I do. I mean, I have some days where I just like won't do work, but won't socialize.
Yeah.
Like not all day. I'm saying like a chunk of time during the day where I set aside for myself. Maybe I do some reading. There's definitely coffee or tea involved. Usually some solo bike riding and sometimes a bit of ritual as well. Like, and those sorts of things really calm me and set me into a place where I can be in tune with myself. Maybe it's like freehand sketching. Maybe it's writing, stream of consciousness writing.
Okay, yeah.
Those sorts of things. Just being with my sketchbook and dedicating some time to being just with the blank page. That can really help to trigger my mind to start thinking about these narratives, these scenes that I see in my head.
Yeah. I like I have like a ritual. I think like rituals are like a really important thing, just like on a daily basis too. Like wake up in the morning and make the coffee, and like with me, I hate this word, journaling, but like I've always hated that word, but like I'll write when I wake up in the morning, and you know, I just have like a little book and I write my thoughts in it, and sometimes that produces things that I get excited about.
Oops.
Oops.
Sorry.
Sometimes not so much, but yeah, I think it definitely helps to have rituals. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I say ritual, I refer less to the small things, the small rituals that we sort of engage in on a daily basis, things that might be unconscious. Mm-hmm. I'm talking a little bit more about intentional rituals, like setting aside space and like thinking about what it is that you want to do transformatively, and come up with some kind of symbolic act that represents that.
Yeah, like meditation or something.
Meditation is different than ritual, unless you have a ritual that is to do meditation.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is this.
Yeah.
I cannot have one of those sessions, those days,
Yeah.
if I check my email.
I totally get that. Yeah. Yeah.
Like once you like dive into email or Facebook, it's done. It's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And it takes maybe it's a social experience or some other intimate sort of one-on-one with another person to detach yourself from that mode. Say if I start the morning out with an email, I might be able to get like this intuitive seeing time, sketching, ideation, whatever.
Yeah.
Later,
But you're starting
in the
your
evening.
day. Yeah, but you're starting your day
if I have like other things that interrupt that, like I'm in office work mode,
Yeah.
like that's a very different thing.
Yeah, I'm the same way. If I check my email just once before I start like anything in the morning, it'll disrupt everything that I wanted to do because I'll continually think about that one email that person sent me. And then
I think it's really important to be able to do small things for yourself that distance yourself from the world and let you connect with yourself.
yeah.
I sometimes just like to take a walk in the morning around the block. And my block is pretty empty, so I'm just like go around the empty green space over there, and it feels soothing and centering in a way that I don't have to really think about anything, but thoughts will come.
Yeah.
And, you know, it could be as simple as going to the museum by yourself.
Yeah.
Just having those taking yourself on a date is really something necessary for the creative mind.
Creative self-care. So going back to your working with other people, like in teaching, how did you get into the idea that you were going to start doing workshops and teaching?
Okay, so when I was at Wayne State and doing fiber classes, like after my first semester I took 2 different fiber courses. After my first semester, the professor offered me like a work study position in the department because I was so enthusiastic about it. And part of my job was cleaning up or setting something up, but part of my job was also to help new students with any of like little troubleshooting problems so that the teacher wouldn't be like inundated with all of these questions all at once. And that was something that spoke to me a little bit, but it was like speaking very softly at the time because I had just started. And the next step there was doing work study at CCS and trying to like play that same kind of role. And one day, one of the other students who had a son who was maybe like 6 or 7 was hanging around in the studio, and I saw him like not really being engaged. So I asked him if he wanted to learn how to tie-dye some fabric, do some shibori, and he was like all about it. So like I led him through the process, and I was like really careful to explain everything in like clear detail so that he could understand it, and also in a way that like he could engage with it, making sure that all the safety precautions were met and all that stuff. And the professor who was around at that time was just like, you are a natural for teaching, like you should seriously consider it. So I kind of started to consider it.
Yeah.
And before you know it, I had amassed enough looms. And I decided to, like, why not? I'll try throwing a workshop.
Yeah.
And I had 3 people come for a month, and I learned a lot from that first session. Like, okay, this is way too much for, like, beginner to handle. Time constraints, materials, this, that, technique. Like, simplify. But regardless of whether or not they, like, came away with something at all,
It was a learning.
they all enjoyed the experience, and they were like, you know, I'm glad that I was a guinea pig for you.
Yeah.
So it
that's
just,
awesome.
like, grew from there, really.
And so now you're doing that. How many workshops do you do?
That's a number I don't really know.
No.
But I'll say, like, last season, I had workshops that I taught here. I did a series of workshops at MoCAD. I was teaching a class at CCS for continuing education.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, like, keeps growing, the workshops I do here and there.
It's interesting to me, like, do you think that, you know, earlier you were talking about how your dad was always trying to teach you things and you weren't interested? It's really interesting that, like, you are teaching now. I don't know.
Well, kind of. Like, he wasn't... His style of teaching was more like, watch me do it.
Yeah.
And you'll get it. Because I'm very sure that's exactly how his mother and father and their parents took the approach. I mean, I've heard multiple stories about, like, this, like, the ways in which my father and his siblings learned things from their parents and grandparents, that if you didn't take to it just by watching, you were never going to get it, and it wasn't for you.
Oh.
Which, to me, is like, you know, that not everyone can learn like that.
Yeah.
So I have very much seen different learning styles.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I accommodate all of them, but I try to.
Yeah. I bet your classes are fun to take. I still want to take one.
They are fun.
At one point I will.
They're a really wonderful thing. At the very least, the workshops are fun, but the classes are really something else, because
that's what
you have multiple days and with a week between to really take it in and absorb the information or let it process.
Yeah.
So you learn more than the physical craft of weaving. There are some things about, like, how the world is seen through a weaver's eyes, and we discuss much more than weaving in the studio while we hang out.
I'm sure.
Like, there's a lot of stuff. We talk current affairs and personal narratives, big topics, little topics.
Yeah.
It varies, and it's a really nice space that is been described to me as being very warm and cozy and welcoming. And for the classes, at least, I cook you dinner, so
Yeah.
you'll never go hungry.
Score. That's awesome. So, so you were saying that a lot of the people, well, not a lot, but, like, you pick people to help you with production. Was that something that was hard to let go of for you, is giving your production to somebody else, or were you comfortable because you trained the person?
Well, I learned a lot along the way, because I started out with a few folks that I either knew had the skills or I thought that I had taught the skills to, and things were bumpy. But I worked with it, and I helped some people get better, and some people, after, like, one run of 3 scarves, were like, I can't do this. Like, it's too nerve-wracking for me to work on something for somebody else. And some people just, like, didn't have the time to commit to it. It just depends. People's schedules change. But aside from that, I've chosen friends I trust who, at least, like, let's say halfway through the game of figuring out the production side of things, I picked a few friends who I knew had some skills in weaving from school.
Yeah.
Or were such enthusiastic students of mine that had come back again and again. And I was like, you're a part of this studio now. You're like, you're a fixture. So
you're
you
one
need
of the
to
workers.
just start doing production instead. Like,
Yeah.
Stop taking classes, start working.
Oh, that's awesome. I always wonder because it's different for everyone. Like, I know that I could give my printing to, say, a company and like let them print my prints for me, but like control issues over like color and stuff, and I still haven't found anyone that I feel comfortable letting do that. So I know it's just different for everyone. So do you have a favorite project that you've worked on?
To date, my favorite project has to be a project I did that was called Daraz Amanor, and it was about a year ago, like a couple days ago, and it was a spring equinox ritual where I put together an installation in a space that was allotted to me. It's a very long hallway, and I was given free reign over it. They were like, you can put something on the wall, you can do this, you can do that, whatever. And I was like, I don't want to put artwork on the wall. I want to make this space totally different and like walk around in a costume and bring people into the space to do a guided ritual. And
was it in like a gallery or what was
it? It was at the CCS Center Gallery's alumni hall.
Okay.
So I didn't do too much promotion for the opening, which is when I had the guided ritual happening. But there was a simultaneous opening in the Center Gallery's main space. And so there were all these people that were there for the regular gallery. And they were like, what's going on in this hallway? There's these curtains. And they came in. And I walked down the hallway and I greeted them. And I started asking them questions. And I made them write their answers down on strips of fabric and tie it into the installation.
Oh, how
and then they would
fun.
get like a gift as a token of their experience. In this case, it was like onion skin dyed hard-boiled egg. For me, it's a traditional thing.
Yeah.
So I was taking I was working off of pre-Christian Armenian mythology. I was working with Armenian traditions that I knew about. I was creating some elements based on my understanding of certain things. But just the way that things came together with the framework that I built for people to engage with the space, with me, with the ideas that we were working with, and how it relied on other people to complete the piece. Not only because people had to tie their answers into the installation, but because the ritual wouldn't have been anything without participants.
Yeah.
And it informed the next iteration of this idea and some other things that have come out of it later. But one of the things that really struck me was that one of the participants, after she had finished going through the thing and there was no one in the hallway so she could just talk to me, was telling me that part of the process after having written these answers down was to receive the blessing of spring, which was being brushed with a bunch of parsley on both sides of the face. And she expressed to me how like emotional that was for her, because as a child her mother used to do that. She's Albanian, and like I had no idea that was like a thing that anybody did.
Was that something you thought you were making up, or?
I was just making it up and like going with it. So like the fact that she said that this was a traditional thing that she'd engaged in was specifically for this kind of moment.
Oh my gosh.
Was just really astounding to me.
Wow. That's so awesome.
Yeah. I'm really glad that people were not only happy to engage with the process I led them through, but that they felt, by and large, like it was something they needed. This cathartic experience of dealing with, in this case, it was death and rebirth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's something that I want to do more of in the future. And I think for me, in order to do that, I need to be offered a space to work within. Because my installations are site responsive. that hallway was only a hallway because it was a hallway. Like,
Yeah, right.
all of the installation pieces in there played off of the fact that it was a hallway.
So, are there any like plans for the upcoming year that you have, like that you want to talk about, or like new classes? You said that you're going to be launching some classes soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have the schedule up before the 1st of April, and the first class I'm offering is Wednesdays in April, so it's coming up real fast.
Yeah.
And I'm changing a few things about how classes work here. So instead of, say, offering like April is going to be beginner and May is going to be intermediate and June will be more than that. I want to do it in such a way that like all three of those can happen in the same time.
Yeah.
So no matter what your level is, you can come in.
Oh.
But you can also let me know by like what you're registering for, like where you want the instruction to be at. But also including more one-off workshops, like come in for a short session, because I know a lot of people don't have the ability to commit to 4 Wednesdays in a row.
Yeah.
Hell, I don't even have that kind of commitment availability. But I mean, with other things, like I take ceramic community classes every so often, and I just make time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is on like Tuesday evenings from 6 to 9. Okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to set that time aside in my schedule. Some people are very set in certain routines that they're like, well, you know, Tuesday never works for me, or Sundays is my day for myself or for family or whatever, and so I can't. I'm like, okay, I live a very flexible life. You tell me, like, there's a class on Monday morning, I don't schedule something for Monday morning.
Yeah.
I mean, if I want to take that class,
Of course.
to say. So there's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
As far as what else is coming up this year, start being on the lookout for some community engagement programs from us at Fringe Society. We're starting to build some programs, as I said, that are free or low cost and open to the public.
Oh, cool.
Anything from bring your old clothes, we're dyeing things black today.
Oh,
or,
fun.
You know, we'll have a themed talk with coffee or something. Like those sorts of things for one. And then even maybe some performative things as well. So just it's in the works.
Yeah. So if you could go back in time and give yourself advice.
Oh, Lord.
What advice would you give yourself?
Trust your intuition and leave the country as much as possible.
Those are good. I like that one.
Yeah, I already make friends very easily, so I wouldn't like be giving myself the advice to do that while I'm abroad. Just makes more sense to say, just go travel.
Just go do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and so as someone that has grown a creative business, what advice would you give to those out there just starting off?
Ask for help at every opportunity you have.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know about something, ask somebody who does. Even just asking for where you can get that information is not going to cost you anything. And if somebody says no, you can ask the question again elsewhere.
Yep.
Or you can rephrase the question so you can actually get an answer.
Yeah. So, Levon, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks for the cookies.
Yeah, I brought Levon Girl Scout cookies because they're wonderful. Cool. And that concludes episode number 9. If you would like to find out more about Levon, be sure to head on over to our website at DetroitCraftAcademy.com, where you can find pictures and links to Levon and all of his websites. And until next week, keep crafting your dreams.
Craft Academy, Detroit Craft Academy, Detroit Crafts with Jody, Detroit Craft Academy.
Is there anything else that you want people to know at all that we didn't cover, or?
Other than the fact that I'm about to read your fortune.
Oh yeah, can that be recorded or no?
That's for you personally.
Okay,
so
I'll record it. If you don't care.
I love that you're like, I was saying more like that's for you personally, and not that's for you personally to decide.
Oh. Well, okay. Well,
But I will say this. So I'm about to read Jody's fortune in a cup of coffee, prepared in the Armenian style. You might be familiar with it as Turkish coffee, Greek coffee, Albanian coffee, etc. It comes from the Arabian Peninsula. End of story. So I'm about to read her fortune, and if you'd like, you might want to request yours too.
yeah.
I charge.
Perfect.